Last year, I finally got the opportunity to photograph the Northern Lights, but not once, not twice, but a total of 3 times, which for someone that lives just north of London, that is incredibly rare. In fact, before 2024, I'd never even seen the Northern Lights before, so be able to photograph them just 5 minutes from my house 3 times in 1 year, yeah, that was pretty special. So in today's video, I'm going to show you guys how I edit my Northern Lights photos to take them from flat to fantastic in Lightroom. And I'm going to start right now. Now, when editing your Northern Light photos, there's one word you always want to keep in your mind when editing, and that word is contrast. Contrast is incredibly important. Getting the right amount of contrast for your image really brings out those beautiful colors that you saw with the naked eye. And when you take a raw image, it sometimes is really lacking in contrast, ending up with this horrible flat image. This is a raw Northern Lights photo, the one that I took in October of last year, and you can see it is very, very dull. It's slightly underexposed, which again is something we can easily fix, but it is completely lacking in contrast. Now, obviously you can just use the contrast slider, but there are better ways to add in natural color contrast to really bring out those beautiful colors that you saw that night. So let's see if we can do that to this image. Right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm firstly gonna go ahead and just bring up my exposure. And I'll bring it up by around about half a stop. Again, that's really brought out some of those colors. But I'm also going to add in contrast. Now, of course, you can just whack up the contrast and just hope it looks good. But most of the time, you just end up with this very dull looking image, and it kind of reduces the amount of Northern Lights that you can see. So let's not just do that. Let's bring it up to around about 20, but no more than that. Now, with the highlights here, I like dropping that down. It brings back a little bit of that definition, a little bit of that information that you can see, especially if we go to this part of the Northern Lights. If we go ahead and zoom in, you can see if we increase it, it bleaches it out, where if we decrease it slightly, it brings in those nice lines that you can see. So I'm going to go for around about minus 30 there, if I zoom back out again. And then with the shadows here, I'm going to increase that by around about plus 30 as well. Now, I want to increase the amount of dynamic range, and a quick trick is with the whites and blacks, increasing the whites by 10 and decreasing the blacks by minus 10. So plus 10 in the whites, and then minus 10 in the blacks. It helps add a little bit more dynamic range to the image. But this is the most important step: texture, clarity, and dehaze. You want to increase these numbers. This will really help bring out a lot of that definition that you can see in the Northern Lights. So what I'm gonna do is go for 20 in texture, 20 in clarity, and 20 in dehaze, and look at the difference. Brought back so much more of that information, especially dehaze. If we now zoom in, you can really see the difference. If I quickly show you the before and after, although it's added in a lot of ISO grain, which is what we'll be fixing later on, it's added in so much more texture to the Northern Lights, adding in a lot more vibrancy as well. And talking about vibrance and saturation, we're gonna go ahead and increase these as well. So I like doing plus 15 for vibrance and then plus 5 for saturation. But there's one more way we can add in contrast, and that is using the tone curve. And the tone curve is such a powerful tool. If you'd like to learn more, I've actually made a masterclass tutorial, which is this video here. But for this video, I'm just gonna show you how you can add in natural color contrast. Now, ignore the point curve. We're not gonna be using that in this video. We're gonna be focusing on the 3 channels you can see here: the red channel, green channel, and blue channel. Now, firstly, what you want to do is to create a subtle S-curve. Now, with this image, especially Northern Lights, we want to add a little bit more information to the highlights by not necessarily affecting the shadows. And this is what the tone curve is great for, because we can actually refine that ourselves without Lightroom doing it automatically for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring a lot of information into the highlights. So I'm going to bring up the right-hand side of our tone curve and slightly bring down that in the shadows there. So we're going for this very subtle S-curve, emphasizing more the highlights versus the shadows. Now, obviously, this has kind of ruined the image. It's added in red, which we don't obviously want. But if we go ahead, right-click on our tone curve and go down to copy channel settings, we want to paste that on the green channel. So we're going to right-click, paste channel settings, and then what we're going to do is go to the blue channel and do the same thing. Right-click, paste channel settings. So what this has done is it's applied a color contrast look to both the red, green, and blue, and look at the difference. If I do the before and after, it's really brought out that vibrancy, but not using the vibrance or saturation slider. Now again, we can actually affect this further if we want to, but just remember, every change you make to one channel, you'll need to copy and paste that to the other channels. Now there's one more thing we can do, and that's actually using the masking panel. So if you go over to our masking panel here, we want to brighten and darken certain parts of the photo. Now the northern lights in this image is predominantly in the middle part of our photo. So what I want to do is darken the foreground and darken the sky. And what this will do is it really bring attention to those northern lights. So for this, I'm just going to go ahead and create a linear gradient. I'm going to go ahead and select the top half of the image, roughly to where the northern lights start. So go for something like so. All I'm going to do is going to go to my exposure here and bring that down. I'm going to bring it down for about -1 stop there. And then the same thing, I'm going to go ahead, create a new mask this time, go to linear gradient, select the bottom half of this image here, so roughly where the silhouette starts. Again, roughly where the northern lights start is where you want to stop your mask. And again, go to my exposure here and bring that down. Again, I'm going to bring that down probably by 1 entire stop. And just look at the difference. Obviously, I could do a little bit more, but if I just show you this, the before and after, the difference is extreme. And it's because we've affected contrast in multi-factors. Firstly, we've actually used the affected contrast in the contrast slider. Then we've emphasized that further using the tone curve. And then lastly, we've brought more attention to it by darkening everything else using the masking panel. And those 3 tools will really help bring back so much more information to your northern lights photos. And don't forget texture, clarity, and dehaze. And after color grading a little bit further, here is the before and here is the after. Thank you to all my YouTube members that are currently supporting the channel. If you guys want to support the channel and get some awesome perks, including free Lightroom presets, which you'll be able to find on my website, make sure to go ahead to the link in the description. I've been James for Photo Fever, and I'll catch you guys on Thursday.